So you called this meeting because you wanted to talk about true dialogue and what's involved in that. The title of the workshop is Toward Belonging, and coming to true dialogue is something that helps people feel like they actually belong to each other, belong to a family, belong to a community. In true dialogue, people end up getting deeply listened to. But there's a process that people, couples, families, groups, communities have to go through.
Anytime you have to hide, anytime you have to pretend, anytime you cannot show up fully as who you are, what you think, how you feel, what you see, what you want, what you need, what you came here to be, when all of that has to be suppressed somehow for you to be in conversation or relationship with other people in order to get belonging, that feel way less than human beings are capable of.
So when people have to hide some aspect of who they are or how they think or how they feel about things, what they think,
right,
then it's very limited amounts of real belonging or real dialogue.
So there was this huge need that spurred the community building movement, the intentional community movement, and how are we going to get together and talk about these things? So that fueled Scott Peck's development of dialogue work. It was the community building movement, right? And David Bohm's another one who developed dialogue work as a means. He was a quantum physicist who had a great deal of trouble getting heard because his ideas did not fit in with the orthodox understanding of quantum physics at the time. So he had to go off and develop a system on his own of how can people sit and actually listen to each other and get heard and understood rather than dismissed and ridiculed and reviled and all of that.
For David Bohm, it applied to his membership in the scientific community because he did get sidelined.
Mm-hmm.
But then he developed this way of bringing together people who don't agree,
right,
in order to actually enhance their total understanding of physics. I'm wondering if a similar thing has happened in lots of arenas, whether it's political or religious or medical. It's like some people get sidelined or censored, and what we really need is everyone showing up. There's no way any one person can, or any one small group of a whole discipline can know what the total of truth or reality is. It takes all of us coming together, and then we can start to approach a greater understanding of our world, of our relationships, of truth with either a small t or a capital T.
Mm-hmm. So we've lost our ability to be with people with whom we disagree, to communicate with them in a sort of civil, friendly argument, to be different and to not hate them. So that's threatening. I mean, that's the basis of the republic, of democratic conversation, to be able to do that. But it's also the basis of family systems and partnerships and everything. We are different from other people, and if you can't let other people be different than you without hating them or ridiculing them or reviling them or dismissing them
or trying to change
them, then you can't yourself have the experience of showing up and being accepted for who you are.
So there's a process that people have to go through,
right,
to get from my way or the highway, or you have to change, or
Right.
you're to blame, or I have to just shut up so that we don't get into a huge conflict. There's a process that we have to go through to do that.
Right.
And we can talk about it on a group level, but I can share a little bit about how we have, in our own relationship, come to deeper and deeper levels, both of belonging, but also about getting to a deeper truth about things. So it happened this morning. We were talking about kind of what our plans are for this next period of our lives. And you said, we need to put the big rocks in first. And immediately I got grabbed inside, like, but what if I don't want to put the big rocks in first? Or what if we don't agree about what the big rocks are? Or, and I had to, I mean, it wasn't a huge gut clench, but it was a little gut clench. So I had to notice that. So I didn't immediately get defensive or start arguing with you, or just shut down. And I did. I just relaxed a little bit and I went, oh, right, the big rocks. What does that mean? Well, it's the idea that if you put the big rocks in your container first, then you can put smaller things in. If you fill it up with sand and water, there's no room for the big rocks, the most important things. And then I relaxed and I said, yeah, right. So do we agree on what the big rocks are? And the truth is we do. We've been talking about what the real work is we want to do in the world, and that we got to put those big rocks in first.
I wonder if that feeling you had was provoked by, I began the conversation by saying, I had the thought this morning that I am the guardian of the big rocks. Then that sounds like I'm in charge and I'm going to enforce this big rock thing.
Yeah.
And you're immediately being told what to do and all of that.
By
that
a big, smart white guy.
Right, that you had to fight against inside. So, yeah.
Rather than focusing on the word guardian, which is what you want to do, is protect and guard our highest being and our highest interests. When I focus on the word guardian, I relax. So, so all of that goes on in milliseconds, it seems like. And it takes awareness. Oh, I just got triggered.
Right.
Oh, and what's that triggering based on? Oh, well, a lifetime of bowing down to Mr. Know-It-All. Not you, but all the Mr. Know-It-Alls I've had in my life, and not having really solidly and forever stepped into, no, I get to have my perspective, and it has great wisdom to it at times. And sometimes I'm way off, and it's so nice to have gentle reminders of how I'm not on. And so I had to, take a few moments, because I've been practicing this for a long time. So it's not that hard for me to do anymore. But then we had a great talk. And it was a dialogue, and we talked, and all of that came out to a great resolution, which was, we're going to make this video today. So that happens on an interpersonal level when people really listen to each other. Then they can see where they're blocking, get rid of that part, really listen, and you listen to me.
Then there are agreements or guides or whatever that we put in place when we do a dialogue workshop. And the biggest one is you agree to suspend your assumptions. Right? And that's what you did. I started talking and claimed primacy in the realm of guarding the big rocks, and you were hit and you had to stop and you go, oh, what am I assuming here? Or What am I reacting to? What's running me in the background? And you agreed to just stop that and suspend that so that you could listen and then continue on. So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you want to say more about suspending assumptions?
Well, it's like that board game. It's a simple concept. Suspend your assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes a lifetime to master.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is, the first step is you have to notice you've got some assumptions running.
Right.
And
Which is hard because they're not going to feel like assumptions a lot of the time. They're just going to feel like the way it is
the
and
way
what's
it
true.
is,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
It's the way it's always been.
right.
And I don't want to. Heaven forbid I should not do it the way I've always done it.
I cherish my
I do
assumptions.
too. Yeah, if we didn't have some assumptions running all day long, we'd just sit around, drooling
Right.
out of being freaked out.
That's
Will the sun come up tomorrow? Well, I'm just going to assume it does, and it might not.
I have to assume that this floor, which the physicists tell me is mostly nothing, will hold me up when I get out of my chair and walk on it. So,
Right. So it's not like assumptions are the enemy.
well, it's why we use the gentle word suspend,
Right.
right?
Right. Don't abandon your assumptions. Just suspend them. David Bohm said, lift them up here so you can still see them, but you can see through. If your assumptions are just right here, you can't see what other people are bringing to the table that might be really valuable.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay, so suspending assumptions. It's not easy. You have to become conscious, and there's a element of vulnerability. Like, if I suspend my assumptions, then will I be judged if I in fact give up some of my assumptions?
Right.
Like, well, you were saying that your whole life and then you let go of it. Well, that was stupid.
Right.
Rather than, oh, wow, I had an epiphany. I had a deep realization. This changes everything, and to celebrate.
Right.
One of the things that has to happen in a relationship, in a family, in a group, in a community, is there needs to be a certain level of safety where people test it out with each other.
Right.
Am I going to be ridiculed? Am I going to be laughed at? Am I going to be blamed? Am I in a group of people who can all see their own humanness and their own foibles,
Right.
so that it's okay for me to have my foibles and admit them and have a sense of compassion. And also, I love that part of what you usually bring is a sense of humor, and it's so healing to be able to laugh at ourselves and say, oh my God, that's been an assumption for so long, and
Right.
I can see how it's very limited and of limited use.
So what's another agreement we come into in the dialogue circle? Meet as colleagues. Does that language still work?
Well, yes, and colleagues is different from equals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's been this kind of conflation of that meeting as colleagues should be meeting of equals. We're not equal, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But we'd all look the same if we were equal. Colleagues are people that we hold with esteem,
Mm-hmm.
even though we may have very different experiences or areas of expertise. We don't generally include children in any kind of formal dialogue because they have limited experience. People do include children in the decision-making process because they are colleagues. They're colleagues in the family, and they need to have input, even if they're not the decision makers, so that they grow into, oh, my needs and wants and ideas are important and valuable.
So colleagues are kind of like teammates.
Teammates.
We're on the same side. In Kurt Vonnegut's terms, you're a karas. You're a group of people who are coming together often unbeknownst to you, to do a piece of work for God together. There's that kind of we're all working on this together.
Right. I love that idea of teammates, because what if we were on a team to create a sense of belonging for everyone in our family, or we were teammates on a team to create belonging in our community, in our church, in our family? What if we were colleagues on a team to create deep belonging with each other? We're on a team. That's a great, I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. And, on a soccer team, you've got the forwards who are going for the strike, and then you've got the way back, the goalie, who's trying to stop us from going into the weeds and keep the ball on our side, and not let the enemy, which in this case isn't people, it's the enemy is fractionation and some people having to shut up and other people getting to dominate. That's the enemy.
People got your back and you've got theirs.
Right.
And there's just nothing like that.
Right. We're on a team to create that.
Would you say we have an agreement? People agree to keep their butt in the chair.
That is really important, because when somebody gets up and leaves, then the group has in some way perhaps failed that person, and we need to come to grips with that. And the person, because the person got too freaked out, too scared, too angry, too whatever, and they left. And so the commitment to keep your butt in the chair is to say, when I'm too freaked out, I'm too angry, I need to sit here, we need silence, that they take responsibility, but that the group also has a responsibility to respond to that. So it's keeping your physical butt in the chair, but also being present. That's part of the reason why we get rid of technology for the course of the week or the 4.5 days in a workshop, is because it's so easy for technology to get our consciousness focused on other things rather than in what is our work for this period of time. That's why it's so important to shut the computer, get rid of the cell phone when we're in dialogue together. It's to keep our psychic butts right here, right in the present.
So, to be honest, the reason people don't want to keep their butts in the chair is because true dialogue can feel unnatural and challenging.
Right, because we weren't brought up with it.
We were not brought up with this skill set. We did not see it demonstrated around us. We did not train in it from an early age.
Right.
And we've got lots of kind of societal programming and or wounding that gets in our way.
Yeah.
So it's a harder process than it might otherwise be. And so people get uncomfortable. And when you're uncomfortable, you want to get up and get out of your chair and go away.
Go away.
Yeah.
But you can stay with your physical butt in the chair, but go away in your head.
You can do that too.
But I think it's not an either or thing, because part of, just like this morning between us, I didn't even have to say all that stuff that went through me. I disengaged for a moment to check in with what's going on with me. And, because we've done so much of this with each other, I didn't have to report it. But in a group, it might be important to keep your butt in the chair, go inside for a bit and say, what's going on? Why am I so triggered right now? What's getting me going here?
Right.
And then be able to speak that into the group.
Right.
That would be being really present. Like staying present both with oneself and with what's going on in the circle.
There's always the right to pass, which is another of the agreements going into this.
Right. Because I think there's a bodily felt sense. I'm moved to speak now.
Right.
And I'm not moved to speak now.
Mhm.
And that needs to be really honored. And often we use those words. Do you feel moved to speak?
Right.
And if you don't feel moved to speak, you don't have to speak.
That's a really good part of the right, but the past, the other part being safety. It's safety related, right? You may not be ready. You may not feel safe in the group to talk about whatever is in your mind or whatever you're feeling in your body right then, which you can take on. Again, the group can take that on as it's a group responsibility of we have not yet made it safe enough for that person to talk, rather
Right.
than that person that's not talking is somehow doing it wrong or.
But it also goes the other way, which
Sure.
is we haven't made it safe enough for people to be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Because extroverts and introverts deal with these situations really differently.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes extroverts are afraid to just let it be quiet because they're so used to and fed by just any kind of interaction.
And there's no real correlation between someone's verbal participation and what they take away from it.
Oh, and that is so true.
I've been in lots of large group work where the whole weekend somebody doesn't say hardly anything, and yet they go away with life-changing insight and bodily felt experience. And the silent people actually can add to the group.
Right, because they add their focused attention and people feel honored by that.
Where will people be on the first day, the second day, the third day? How will it look in the room?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Well, the first evening and much of the first day will be people settling in.
Right.
And just feeling like, okay, this is an okay place to be. And that's kind of a first stage. You could call it inclusion. It's not deep belonging yet because people haven't had time to really feel out. I get to speak or not speak or express who I am and what I think and how I actually feel.
But there's the beginnings of something there because it's like, hey, I'm in a room with other people that chose to do this thing with me.
Right.
So there's a potential here. What's going to happen?
Right. And we've all agreed to come.
Right.
And so there is that element of automatic, like, wow, interesting. Who's here?
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Yep.
And
then inevitably, someone's going to say something that's different.
Some courageous soul will say something, or naive soul will say something that they think everybody agrees with because obviously, and then another courageous soul will say, actually, it's not that way for me, and I can't imagine how anybody could hold the other opinion.
Right.
And
then we're off to the races.
And it becomes what would we call it? An intense part of the journey.
Yeah.
An actively intense part of the journey where people keep trying to heal or convert each other to their point of view. It's active and it's important, and part of what it does is it gives people an experience of, I just said something and somebody has just said the opposite, and it's okay. Everybody's still in their chairs,
right?
And they're thinking and they're listening and they're serious. And then also sometimes somebody says something really funny, because we need that humor, and the whole group explodes in laughter, and we feel belonging in that, in that experience.
Isn't that the heart of belonging? In a relationship, when you can show up as who you are and what you think and what you feel, and the other person doesn't go away.
They don't go away.
In fact, in the best of worlds, the other person is interested and wants that and cherishes who you are.
Right. So. And that's down the road.
Yeah.
But the first step is to start risking, trying to heal and convert each other.
Right.
And And then we come to a place where it's not working.
Right.
It's an important stage where all of our strategies to create something that just fits for us start falling apart because it obviously isn't working for other people. And then we go into probably the most challenging phase, which is Scott Peck calls emptying. And it's beginning to empty out the assumptions we've had about how we need to heal and convert other people, because that's not working. Or we have to empty out our need to be in control of everything all the time and realize that's not working. For some people, it's emptying out the need to please or the need to fit in with everything, have everything, or the need to avoid conflict because we can't anymore. And sometimes it's emptying out, I'm not worth it.
Right.
I'm not worth this. Why are people even in the room with me? I don't have anything. And that has to get emptied out. Like, your presence is just as important as everybody else's. On the other hand, it's not more important because you really need these other people to help. We're stuck in the muck.
Right. Sometimes we've called processes like this ego shredding.
Right.
Right, because that's how it feels. Like,
Everything I thought about isn't working.
But the good news is that it's not self-shredding. All it is ego. All it is kind of habitual, top-level stuff. The way of being that you invented just to survive in the world and make sense of things.
Right.
But it's not you. It's not your core. It's not your essential self. It's not who you really are that's getting shredded.
Right.
So I also liken it to, taking peeling the crust of cultural mud off of me, or taking my armor off and laying down my weapons. It can be scary and hard and painful, but what's getting revealed underneath is the whole point, and that's the big prize.
Sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's just done inside oneself. But when we get into that phase and it starts to actively be, there's something that breaks us open, breaks our hearts open. That is, dare I say, transformative. For me, it's a palpable experience of spirit, the divine. And for people who don't have that perspective, they still report something really shifted. So we approach this, while we have spiritual perspectives, we approach this that you don't have to have a particular spiritual perspective to experience this.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been in community building workshops with avowed atheists who said, I was profoundly touched and something happened, and that I don't really know what it was. And at the same time, I've been in groups with very devout Christians who've said that was the Holy Spirit. So there's room for all of that.
Right.
And people don't have to shy away because they have had very clear spiritual experiences or not. And still have a profound and moving experience that's helpful. So then we arrive at a place that we're going to go in and out of. We arrive and then we slide back into the more chaotic, and then we go, oh wait, that doesn't work, does it? Okay, what do I need to empty out inside myself to get back to that place? And what assumptions not only deserve to be suspended, but they deserve to be dismantled because they don't work. And I've got something better here that I'm learning. So we, as a group and as individuals, will go in and out of that space. It's not like a full-blown salvation, enlightenment it's glimpses and then nice, like long periods of resting in a, a new way of being. And then we'll slip back because that's what we do. And that's what brains do. We've got these patterned, easy connections in our brains and we're building new ones. So yeah, so then we go back and forth, and hopefully with 4.5 days, we'll have time to just kind of sit together and say, what needs to be addressed that we can use this amazing new place we found and get some real deep insight.
Yeah.
And topics will come forward. We don't have an agenda of topics,
Right.
because there is a group wisdom that will emerge that'll say we should talk about this.
Right. So all through the process, while it looks like we are disagreeing and trying to heal and convert each other, we're also noticing that person's strength. This person that thinks really different from me is also really sweet to this person. And, oh, this person's really strong. I've never thought of that. They have this really interesting perspective on this. So that it begins to blossom in the midst of us that there's something that's really possible with a bunch of people from different perspectives. And I liken it to our stereoscopic vision. The reason we can see as far and as clearly as we do is because we have two eyeballs looking at things from slightly different perspectives. And imagine how much better our sight would be if we had 100 eyeballs looking at things. It's amazing that you bring this in. So this ability to look at problems and situations from a much wider perspective. And we all begin to say, oh, right, I have my own eyeball looking at this. And that's really important. I have to add that to the collective. But a whole bunch of other people also are contributing eyeballs to this thing. And together, we see things way more clearly, and we come up with stuff we never would on our own.
And I think something that you pointed out, we start to see strengths in people that we never realized they had if we'd known them, or strengths in ourselves that we didn't realize we had.
Right.
Sometimes someone will have been really quiet, an introverted woman, perhaps, who's been really quiet during much of the group conversations, and she'll raise her hand or just say, I need to say something here. And she'll say something and like everything breaks open. It was like this deep, profound, obvious thing that nobody else had seen. And she put her finger on it. Or a man who has appeared to be kind of uptight or not very open and very intellectual, and he makes a summary statement, and it's just like, whoa, he's an analytical type, and he's been watching the whole thing, and he came up with this concise and clear statement that just kind of helped everybody go, that's it. Yeah. So people's strengths tend to come out. And some of the people who had been talking a lot get really blown away by the beauty of silence, and then somebody's voice will ring in with something that's really helpful. So introverts become more extroverted, extroverts become more introverted. There's a wholeness, there's a more people move into different parts of themselves that are really strong.
So the last thing I can think to say is that this is not a conceptual workshop. Not that there won't be content or concepts or teaching moments, so much as in the end, this is experiential. And what it does is it puts the possibility of human beings being on the same team, being true colleagues with each other as they meet the world, on the menu of possibilities. People leave going, it's possible to do that with other people.
And we would say that's been very true for you.
Yeah. Would we?
Well, wouldn't you say that you started out your adult life very skeptical of human beings
Mm-hmm. It's
and
fair.
what's
Yeah.
capable, what they're capable of?
Yeah.
And then you've had a large series of experiences in groups where, profound learning happened,
Mm-hmm.
profound insights for yourself, profound changes and shifts inside yourself, seeing a group coalesce and come to a place.
Right.
And so now you really like human beings.
I was wrong.
Thankfully.
They're a great resource, and there's so much smarts and courage and determination out there amongst human beings that it's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
You know.
And love.
Yeah.